Oh, happy 4th of July. And this year we get 2 weekends to celebrate it. How about that? You know, as I think about the whole creative process that we've been exploring now for a few weeks, it occurs to me when I think of the 4th of July that our founding fathers must have been really good at holding a vision of what they wanted to create. They wanted to create a nation, a place that was separate from what they felt was the oppressive motherland. They wanted to create a place where freedom was taken for granted and granted to all. They must have been incredible Imagineers and very, very tapped into the creative process. When I think about the creative process, there's so many facets to it. We've explored a number of them in recent weeks, ranging from our affirmations to prayer time to meditating on what we want to call into expression. Today we're going to focus on faith, which is about focus and also about imagination. The first thing we need to remember about faith is faith isn't some nebulous, mystical quality that you have a lot of or a little of or none of. Faith is about focus. Where we focus our attention, that's where we're putting our faith. And that's where we are pouring our creative energy. It's not about something you have more of or less of. You already have all the faith you need. The question is, where are you directing your faith? I know some people, and from my own background too, believe that faith had to do with entreating a deity to sweep into my life and fix things for me. And as I've moved along the spiritual path myself and studied faith from more of a new thought perspective, I began to understand that God, as I understand that higher intelligence, would never do that to us. We were created in the likeness and image of the Creator. And that means we were created to create. And we have all of these fabulous tools at our disposal with which to create. We tend to call them spiritual principles and spiritual practices. But as I consider this idea of a deity flowing into my life and changing things up according to what I want, I realize that's not what it's all about. In fact, you and I, as creations of the Creator, were given free will. So that creative mind would never deem to take it upon itself to come into your life and mine and change things. That creative mind, however, gives you and I the capacity and the power to change our own lives. And one of the ways we do that is through faith. What are we focused on? Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, talks in depth about faith as one of these 12 unique powers that all of us have as creations of the Creator. And as he describes the 12 powers, he describes how to work with them and how to understand them. When it comes to the power of faith, his description is not how to do faith. We are called to develop faith. And that means simply to use it, to apply it, to focus our attention on what it is we're wanting to create, knowing that what we want already exists. Did you know that? Think about it for a moment. What is it that you're trying to create in your life right now? Imagine for a moment, whatever that goal is, it already exists. And through the power of your faith, through the power of your focus, you call that into expression in your life. in the world. It's already there. I find that really exciting. We don't have to labor to conjure up something that never existed before. It's already there, just waiting for us to call it into manifestation. Faith is the ability to believe, to spiritually intuit, to perceive, to hear, and to have conviction. To perceive what? To have conviction of what? Well, that's to know. Whatever it is we already desire exists, and we are convinced that we can call it into our life through our faith. One of the terms, one of the phrases we bandy about at Unity is, as you believe, so it is. And that's really a statement that speaks to faith, faith and focus. As you believe, so it is. Wherever you're putting your faith, that is what you're creating. What do you want in your life? What's unfolding in your life? Take a look at where you're putting your faith. Where is your focus? Are you focused on what you want, what you're trying to create? Or are you focused on all the ways that it's not happening or all the ways it could go wrong? Because if that's where your focus is, that's what you're creating instead of the positive outcome I suspect most of you really want. It seems like a really silly question and a minor differentiation, but it is incredibly important. Focus on what you want to create. Don't focus on what you don't want. So how do you focus your faith? You focus it through some of the tools we've already talked about, through our time in prayer. We open ourselves to divine guidance through meditation. A few weeks ago we talked about some of those positive masculine attributes where we're stepping out and getting things done. There's affirmative prayer. There are all kinds of ways that we can take our mind, our thoughts, and direct them toward what it is we're wanting to create. And in my opinion, one of the most fun ways to create what I want in life is to engage one of the other 12 powers, the power of imagination. You know, kids have such great imaginations. You ever watch them play? They pull stuff out of the air and they talk about it and they are just so completely, fully into it that you'd be hard-pressed to convince them that what they're acting out in their play isn't actually happening in their life. You know, work-at-home mom shared the story of her 4-year-old twin daughters. These little girls, Maggie and Katie, were used to seeing their mom in her home office, working on her computer, pulling things off the fax machine. And one day when the girls were playing, one of them stood at the top of a slide, and as she headed down that slide, she yelled, "Look at me, I'm faxing myself." And her sister, not to be outdone, immediately follows her down the slide and says, "Here comes page 2." What imagination, what fun, what playful ways to engage spiritual principles. William Arthur Ward reminds us, if you imagine it, you can achieve it. If you dream it, you can become it. And this takes us right to one of my heroes, Walt Disney. Walt Disney was a man who built his life, his career, his passion as a cartoonist. I mean, really, how many people say, "I want to grow up and draw cartoons"? But Walt did. And he did it with imagination. He imagined things that had yet to come into existence. Back in his day, cartoons and movies didn't talk. But at a certain point, the technology was evolving, and he jumped on and helped develop that technology for the talkies, if you will. He created the first cartoon that actually had sound attached to it. His imagination was always engaged, always going full time, full blast, as he doodled around on a piece of paper with this funny little critter that was originally actually named Mortimer Mouse. Well, thank goodness. Thank goodness his wife had a little more imagination, because she said, no, honey, it's got to be Mickey Mouse. Well, as Disney engaged his imagination and came up with these wonderful cartoons and cartoon characters, his empire began to grow, and he began to imagine other things that he could do. He wanted to create a place where everything was happiness and joy. Well, we all know about Disneyland and now Disney World. It's all about family and fun, about being together, and about using imagination to create a space where that can happen. Disney did not employ engineers. Oh, he employed people who had engineering degrees. He didn't employ technicians, although he employed people who had technical capability. He employed Imagineers. He wanted all of his people to tap in to that wonderful creative aspect of themselves and to allow it to flow, allow it to come out in ways that blessed them and ways that blessed everyone around them. Someone described how Disney worked. He told his staff, the ways to make things work is not to worry, but to get interested in little ideas that sound like fun, like imagining what Peter Pan would see as he flies over the city of London. Imagine what Peter and the children flying high above the Thames River would see. Would they see lamps on the carriages below? Would they hear the clop of horses on the cobblestone? They might even perch for a moment on the hands of big men just before heading to Never Never Land. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. Disney gives us a great template to engage our own imagination. Here are a couple more. All right, golfers, how many are there? Are you here today? Okay, golfers. Golfer Jack Nicklaus practices imagination. He says, I never hit a shot without having a sharp picture in my head. First, I'd see where I wanted the ball to finish. Then I would see it going there, its trajectory, its landing. And the next scene shows me the swing that turns that previous image into reality. His power of imagination propelled him to the upper echelon of golfers worldwide. It can be used for sports, and sports psychologists know this and utilize it every day. How about using your imagination to improve your health? Los Angeles psychologist David Bressler was working with a patient who had colon cancer and was experiencing paralyzing pain. Bressler asked the patient to consider his pain as concretely as he could. And the man soon said, well, I can see that it feels like a vicious dog snapping at the base of my spine. So Bressler took that image and ran with the idea. He said, all right, so as you consider this dog snapping at the base of your spine, causing you great pain, see if you can't make friends with that dog. Pet it, talk to it. The patient did just that. And he discovered that as he became friends with this dog, it stopped snapping and chewing on the base of his spine. And he found that his pain subsided dramatically and was much more manageable. What image do you have of health in your body? And how are you going to use imagination to create the health that you want? Another example is Liu Chi-king. He placed second to Van Cliburn in the 1958 Tchaikovsky competition. Just a year later, he was imprisoned in the Cultural Revolution in China, and for 7 years was imprisoned. 7 years without ever touching a piano. And when he was finally released from his imprisonment, his critics were astonished when he went back into the competition circuit because he was better than ever. And they said, how? How can you be so good after 7 years of not touching a keyboard? And Liu told them, oh, but I practiced every day. Every single day, I rehearsed every note of every song I knew in my mind through the power of imagination. We all can do this. We can all use our imagination to create what it is we want in our lives. Just one more story. At a sports conference in Milan, Italy, James Garfield was an American psychologist and an amateur competitive weightlifter. He was invited to participate in an experiment. First, the trainers told him to do his weightlifting in the usual way. Lying on his back and straining as never before, he managed to lift 300 pounds above his chest, 20 pounds more than he'd ever lifted before. He was quite pleased with that performance. But then the trainers began talking to him, giving him visual images of lifting a much greater weight. They had him imagine the clink of the metal as he pushed against the bar. They had him connect with the sound of his breathing as he exerted the pressure needed to raise the bar. They had him imagine successfully pushing that heavily weighted bar way over his head. Then they put 365 pounds on the bar. Remember, up until then, 360 was his max. He went through it all in his mind again, and then with a mighty effort, lifted 365 pounds. Now, did he get stronger in those 5 or 10 minutes? If anything, he was fatigued from the previous lift. But the power of his imagination, very specifically applied to what he was trying to do in great detail, made all the difference in the world. Yeah, I would imagine, so to speak, that not all of us use a visual approach to creating. Greg, watching you play this morning, I can guess that you probably, your imagination is auditory. You hear songs and sounds. Are there other musicians here that have that same experience? You hear things. So don't think that your imagination has failed you if you don't get a visual image. Go with the senses that are most meaningful to you and allow them to use you. You know, Harvard Magazine says, perhaps imagination is only our intelligence having fun. Play with it. Take time to get into it, have fun with it, get creative with it as you see the end result and even some of the intermediate steps along the way. As you're playing with the idea that you're creating in your life, fill in the details, in as much detail as you can conjure at the moment. What happens when we do that is we're sending a vibration of delight and joy out into the universe. And the universe, being created to reflect back to us what we put out, does what? It reflects it back to us, right? That's how we create with the power of faith and using our imagination. So, we've been doing homework these last few weeks, haven't we? So I'm going to invite you to play with faith and imagination for a few minutes this morning, just within yourself. For a moment, consider, what is it? What is your goal right now? It doesn't have to be a big life-changing goal. Maybe you're just trying to get some little project accomplished, bring it to completion. Maybe you're wanting to take a step forward in some facet of your life, whether it's career or relationship or health or personal growth. What is your goal? And now, with the power of imagination, start playing with it. What are the steps that you're divinely guided to take to move you toward your goal? What does that look like? How does it feel to you? Does it bring up feelings within you, or maybe whatever you're working on actually has a texture to it? Draw all of your senses into the process of imagination. Are you going to hear something different as your goal comes into fruition? These are powerful, powerful tools. And as we relax into them, as we focus on them, as we play with them, the work, if you will, we do with our focus, our faith, and our imagination will bring the desires of our hearts to us so much more quickly. Have you got that picture in your mind? Or maybe it's in your ears, or maybe it's in some other aspect of your senses. See what your life looks like when that goal is fulfilled, when you've achieved what you're trying to accomplish. Paint a picture of that in your mind. What does your fulfilled goal look like? And then say, thank you. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, for working with me and empowering me to bring my desire into manifestation. And now I'm going to ask you to shift gears for a moment, because we have our homework assignment number 2 to work on. I'm going to work on that together for just a moment this morning. Our focus, our goal, our affirmation was to be a positive force in the world through growing this spiritual community at Unity of the Valley, welcoming more people to expanded creative consciousness on our collective journey together. So take a minute if you feel like closing your eyes, go right ahead. Sometimes that's easier. What does this spiritual center look like, fulfilling that goal? I see more and more seats in the sanctuary occupied every Sunday. I visualize all of our space, our classrooms, more effectively utilized, giving people the opportunity to learn and grow in different ways in their own life. I see spiritual classes, I see practical classes. I see the skylight room filled with people laughing and talking and enjoying each other's company and companionship. I even see brainstorming sessions where groups from this community come together and talk about how can we make an impact in our greater community. We are empowered through the power of our faith, through the power of imagination, through all of the other powers to create our life and our world as we desire it to be. what we can perceive and believe we can achieve. We are powerful spiritual beings, and we have all the tools and all the faith we need to create magnificently. And I invite you now to join me once again in our affirmation for the day, as we know the truth that, divinely guided in all things, I effectively engage faith and imagination as I boldly and confidently create the life I desire, and I am blessed. And so it is.